Hello and welcome to the Over 50 Health and Wellness Show. I'm your host, Kevin English. I'm a healthy aging expert and the founder of The Silver Edge, and I am on a mission to help men and women just like you build lean, strong, healthy, capable bodies they love for the rest of their lives. Today, we've got a special treat as we're joined once again by my esteemed guest co-host, Coach Russell. In today's episode, we dive into a mix of personal stories, some insightful fitness discussions, and even some controversy in the health community. We kick off with a light-hearted chit-chat about some recent personal milestones, as well as some of my fishing adventures. We pivot to a heated debate involving fitness influencers and the nuances of exercise advice, which leads us into a detailed discussion on the preferences, benefits, and drawbacks of machines versus free weights in our training routines. So whether you're just starting your fitness journey or looking to deepen your understanding of effective workout strategies, today's conversation is packed with practical tips and heartfelt stories from the gym floor. So grab your headphones and let's get started on another episode to help you become the healthiest, strongest, most vital version of yourself in the second half of your life. Russell, welcome back to the show.
Thank you for having me back.
Yeah, man, my pleasure. Always a good time to get together and chat a little bit. Well, hey, do I look different to you than the last time you saw me? Do I sound different?
No, I think, what, you feeling a little under the weather? Or?
Nope,
No?
that's not it at all. Do I not look sage and wise and mature to you?
We talk about the facial hair?
Nope. I
I'm
turned 60,
lost then.
man. Yeah, no, right
Oh,
on.
that's
Hit you
right.
with it, yeah.
That's right.
So that's what I'm saying. Look, dude, so all of a sudden I've got this wisdom of the ages upon me as I've turned 60 now. Yeah, no, turned 60 last week
Yeah.
before. Yeah, so by the time this airs, it'll be a couple weeks ago. Yeah. Anyway, had a really good time. Let me ask you this. Are you by any chance a fisherman? Do any fishing?
You know, growing up, yes, I fished a lot
Yeah.
with my dad, and I joined the Coast Guard, so I was on the other end of the fishing side, the enforcement of it. So
Right on. Yeah.
I've seen two
Well,
sides of it.
yeah. So, yeah, different kind of fishing there, maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm a passionate fisherman. I suppose that started when I was a little boy, lived on a big beef cattle farm. We had a couple of ponds on our property. We had like, I don't know, a few hundred acres. And every once in a while, people would, drive along and stop and knock on the door and say, "Hey, would you mind if I fish back there in that pond?" And so there was this man, Mr. Mansfield, and he was the one. I think he might even have brought me my first fishing pole, like a little Zebco 202 or whatever his little kind of beginner reels are, and catch some bluegill out of the pond, and then later graduated to bass. But fast forward, as a grown ass man now, live at the beach, and I've had boats most of my life here. At one time or another, I've had everything from small inshore boats to large offshore fishing boats, and have just really fallen in love with saltwater fishing. And as part of my birthday this year, we went down to Isla Mirada in the Florida Keys for a little while, and my wife booked me a half-day fly fishing charter. Are you familiar with fly fishing on flats? Does that mean anything if I say that to you?
Yeah.
That is
Yep.
just that skinny water, that shallow water,
Yep.
and you got the guide in the skiff, and he's pulling you along so you can be stealthy and kind of trying to creep up on a fish, and then you do the fly, try to get the fly out to him. So it was just a half day charter, so really short. I mean, look, if it's up to me, I want to be pushing off the dock at 4:30 in the morning, and I don't
Yeah.
expect to be back until 4:30, 5:30 in the
Yeah.
afternoon. But it was a short trip for me, but God, it's so beautiful down there. They have such gorgeous water,
Yeah.
crystal clear. The guy was like, "Hey, what do you want to fish for?" And I said, "Well, look, my dream fish down here would be a bonefish on the fly." But to be honest, I'm not really a fly fisherman. I don't do very much fly fishing, and it's been a while since I've done it. I'm probably pretty rusty. I was like, "Man, I'd just like to catch a fish on the fly and then see where we go from there." So take about a 35-minute ride out into basically the Everglades National Park is what it is, and these beautiful keys and these mangrove little tiny islands. And he sneaks around, I guess, the back of probably his secret spot. And wouldn't you know it, 10 minutes later, I'm hooked into a really nice snook. I don't know if you know what a snook is, but
Mhm.
it's a native fish in the Caribbean there and in Florida. Anyway, I had a really good time, caught the snook, got him in. And at that point, I was like, "Hey, look, I've got my fish. I'd really like to go hunt a bonefish." And unlike fishing for snook and other things where you might do some blind casting, you don't really cast until you see a bonefish. and they're really, I mean, that's a lot of people's life fish. So we spent probably the next 2 or 3 hours looking for a bonefish, and it wasn't for lack of trying. We never saw one, so I never got a chance to cast at one. But look, again, I'm still pretty new to the whole fly fishing and saltwater piece of this, and so that even if we had seen a bonefish and the guides, like, put me right on it and told me what to do, I'm not so sure I woulda got that fish, but had a blast out there, man.
It
Just
sounds
a
awesome.
blast.
Yeah, I haven't been to the Keys in a long, long time. It's beautiful out there.
Oh, it's so gorgeous out there. Yeah, every time, so my wife's one of her, like, grade school friends lives down there, she and her husband. Shout out to Joy and David, great, great hosts down there. They're
Oh,
always roll out the red carpet for us every time we come down. So we go down fairly, I don't know, now it's not fairly often, but every once in a while. That's one of our kind of go-to spots when we're looking for a little getaway. So anyway, I had a really good time. I didn't know if you were a big fisherman or not. If so, we were going to swap some more fish stories, but maybe maybe we'll move along
it
and talk about some
it
fitness stuff.
when I do, it's a little bit with the boys, they get
Just
bored
take the
pretty
boys out.
easily. Yeah, they get
Yeah,
bored
yeah.
pretty easily, but my last big one was in Alaska,
Oh,
again,
nice.
when I was in the Coast Guard, but, when we're on shore, we get to do our own thing, so we did a few fishing excursions. Monster halibut. I mean, just,
Oh,
oh
yeah. So
god,
those are the big
ta
doormats, aren't they?
talk about a fight, like,
Yeah.
you're grinding. It'd be a great workout machine to program just a pole and just
Oh,
pull
that's right.
pull
Pull
back from.
reel, pull reel. Yeah, man. Yeah.
So, yeah, no,
Yeah,
good
it's
time.
kinda funny. Back in when I had my big boat, and this would have been, I don't know, 10 years ago maybe. I had a big offshore boat. Was not so because my kids were young at the time. My wife's a very nervous boater anyway, so nobody liked the big boat. I was making a bunch of money, and I upgraded my boat from the little boat that we had, which is perfect for the intercoastal waterway where we live and just going from sandbar to sandbar and going out to the islands and stuff like that, but wasn't perfect for running, 40, 50 miles offshore. So I got this big boat. Kids and the wife didn't really like it, but my buddies loved it, right? When I first started out, I was like, look, you meet me on the dock at 4:30 in the morning because we push off. We want to have lines down in the water, sun up. That was kind of my thing. And when I first started doing that, like every weekend, just going hardcore, there was no shortage of dudes that would meet me at the dock and we'd go and we'd fish hard all day long. But slowly over time, is this, people, some of the guys that start coming up with excuses. Well, I don't know. My wife says this, or my kids got this game, or this and that. So they started weeding out until it was just me and one other dude that my boy Art, I don't think he listens to this, but he was my man. I could always count on him. I was like, Art, we're gonna meet at 4:30. Right on, brother. He'd be there waiting for me when I got there. And I had the boat loaded up with ice and gas, and we just 40 miles offshore. We would fish hard all day, be back at the dock 4, 5, 6 o'clock at night sometimes. But yeah, good times.
Yeah, that's always a good time, and I know what you mean by dad was like that. You had to be out there at 4 in the morning, and you didn't come home
Yeah,
until 5 p.m.
yeah,
So,
yeah.
I was the only one that stuck with him because, I couldn't say anything back to my dad, so
You wasn't an option, yeah. Let's
yeah,
go, son.
I was like,
Right on.
"Well, sounds kinda long, dad," but yeah.
Yeah. No, none of my kids, my daughter or my son really my daughter for a short while was really into it, but it was brief.
Yeah,
Was just a phase.
yeah. Funny, you think your child's gonna take on all your hobbies and attributes and everything, and it turns out you're like, Who is this kid?"
Yeah,
Totally
what's
different.
up with that? They're not mini me's? What are you
Yeah,
talking
no,
about?
not many
Yeah.
means, yep.
Yeah, they got the mind of their own, no doubt.
Yeah, they sure do.
Alrighty, man. Well, what's new with you? Looks a little different there behind you.
Yeah, I moved a whole
Right on.
3 houses away, so what I thought was gonna be a 3 to 5 hour move turned into be a all day, most of the night
Oh,
move.
for
Yes,
fun times.
but super fun. Your projected 3 to 5 hour move turned into a all day and all night move, and
Dude, 3 to 5, how are you gonna move in 3 to 5
I
hours?
had
Come on, man.
movers. I
That's
just thought,
unrealistic. Oh,
when
you
you
had
just look
movers? Okay, that's
around,
fair. That's
you
fair,
look
yeah.
around, you're like, "Oh, I don't have that much stuff." And then you start opening
Yeah,
stuff up and you're like, "Oh my gosh." But the good
right.
news is I got rid of a ton of stuff. So either I
Yeah,
sold,
that was a good time to
donated,
purge.
and the rest of it, the junk man came and got. And the kids and I
Right
were
on.
actually on the same page. If we haven't used it in a year, it's gone. so,
Right.
so that was the rule. So the new rule in the
Uh,
house is once we buy something, we get rid of something. So Like,
Oh, okay.
but
Yeah. Bring
try not to go through that
something new,
again.
get rid of something old.
Yeah, but it's
Yeah.
nice to have a lot less stuff. So all that clutter
Yep.
was getting to be too much. Yeah, so
Yeah, right on. So I'm married to a realtor and I have literally my kids feel like gypsies. We figured it out. We have moved on average once every 2 years. And now
wow.
if you think 2 years makes sense because there's the whole capital gains thing, but
Yeah.
there are houses that we have not stayed in for 2 years.
Wow.
We built houses from the ground up, stayed there 2 years and left. We're just this is probably the longest we've been in one place. We're on 3 years, so we're way well, I say we're overdue for a move. I'm getting ready to move in about 6 weeks, but it's right like you, it's right down. We own some, as you know, we own some property out
Yeah.
here in North Carolina, and we are building another house on our property, and it should be done. They say in 6 weeks. I believe it when I see it because
Yeah.
everything takes longer than you think it will. But we're taking the house that we're currently in, and we're going to convert it into a little duplex, and we're putting the kids here. So I got
Oh,
two adult
nice.
kids, and yeah, so one of them is just recently. He's already here, and then my daughter, who lives in an apartment down the road a little ways, she's going to have the other half of this house. So this will be where we are. It'll be a duplex, and we'll be the neighbor down the road here.
That's
So
pretty
we'll be
cool.
their landlords. Yeah,
Yeah, that
yeah,
is really cool. Yeah. I don't have anybody that close to do that with. So trust me, I'd move back
yeah.
in. I'd move back in with my parents if I could right now.
If they'd let you, yeah,
At
right.
50 years old.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I can remember getting out of college and moving back in with my parents. I just couldn't figure out why they didn't seem thrilled to see me. I was like, "What? I'm your firstborn son. Why? How would this not be the best thing ever? I'm back, baby. Not for long, but I'm back." And
Yeah.
yeah,
I think
so
that's their worry. How
that,
how
yeah,
long you're
right.
gonna be
Yeah,
back
it's kind of
for,
like
yeah.
when my son came back here. I was like, wait a minute,
What's
a
going on?
little different now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
All righty,
so
man. Well, hey, let's talk about some fitness stuff.
yeah.
So we've got a text group, us coaches, and we're always sending each other information in there. And I sent you over something. Do you know who, or did you know who Jordan Syatt was before I sent that to you?
I
I feel like pretty much everybody
yeah,
kind of knows
I
who he
know
is,
him through
right?
social media, yeah.
Know him through social media. He was recently on Mind Pump, right? So
That might be
anyway,
why I've seen him too.
yeah, the dude is he's definitely a fitness influencer. He's got close to 1 million followers on Instagram alone. So he's all over social media, has been for quite a while. I'll tell you this about Jordan Side, the how I first found him way back, I don't know, this is probably right at the beginning of the pandemic time when I was deciding I was going to be an online fitness coach. He had, and he may still have, I don't know, but he had a podcast that was titled, I think it was something, the title might have been How to Be an Online Fitness Coach. It was
Mm,
something like that. It was pretty easy to find. You can figure out how I found that, right? I was just kind of Googling around as I was getting my search and trying to figure this whole thing out. So he had a great podcast, and that's where I found him. And then I just kind of, because he's such a big voice in the nutrition personal trainer space, I just follow him to hear what he has to say. But he recently released a video, a reel, an Instagram reel, where he just tore into Dr. Gabriel Lyon. Now, I'm guessing you know who Dr. Gabriel Lyon is, right?
yep, I
Yeah.
actually met her.
You actually met her.
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah,
very cool.
yeah,
Yeah. Yeah, right on. You met her at a Mind Pump event
yeah, my
or
pumped event. Yeah,
awesome. Awesome.
yeah, so I was kinda surprised when she was speaking what she spoke about.
Yeah. So, yeah, I want to pull this apart a little bit and I want to kind of talk about this because there's a couple sides to this. And I feel strongly on one side, and you're going to figure out where that is probably pretty quickly here. But first of all, so if you don't know, if you have no context, let me kind of explain what the video is. So, first of all, there's the text at the bottom of this post writes, he says something about, this is the most important video I've ever made in my life. Please watch to the end. I'm like, oh shit, okay. And then he comes on and he's all serious and he says, I did not want to have to make this video. You can probably already tell by my tone of voice where how I feel about this video. But he says, I didn't want to have to make this video, but I feel like I have to, something along those lines. And then it cuts to Dr. Gabriel Lyon being interviewed by somebody else, not by Jordan, of course. And she's saying something along the lines that in general that some exercise is better than none. And she doesn't think that we should say that. She thinks it's wrong information. It's holding people back and she thinks it's holding people to this lower standard. So then we cut back to Jordan where he just rips into her. What? This lady's a doctor. How dare she say that? You're saying that no exercise or some exercise is is not better than none. How dare, this is dangerous. You're going to kill people with this information. And then there's this uh, cut away again to this third party person saying, everybody here is dumber for having heard that, right? So for some comic relief in there. And then he cuts back to Dr. Gabriel Lyon, and she's saying something along the lines of walking is great, but we don't really count that as exercise. And he just goes ballistic, starts dropping some F bombs and saying, what? She's a freaking doctor. This is ridiculous. How dare she say that walking isn't exercise? And then he tells a bunch of like 10, bizarrely, he tells like these 10 bizarre anecdotal stories of so and so lost 30 pounds by just by walking 30 minutes a day, and so cured cancer just by walking an hour a day, and so lost 90 pounds because they started walking. How dare you say walking doesn't count as exercise? Now let's back up. So some of you were probably thinking, well, yeah, why would a doctor say that some exercise is not as, is just worthless and that we need to hold ourselves to a higher standard? Why would a doctor say that that walking wouldn't count as exercise? What we need to understand here, and Jordan 100% absolutely does understand this. I suspect he is doing this for the clicks and the likes because he has taken something that Dr. Gabriel Lyon has said out of context. So in that interview, she's being asked about muscle. She's being asked about muscle in the context that we often talk about muscle, right? That metabolically expensive type 2 fast twitch muscle. So that's the context that she's making these remarks in. And when we talk about building muscle to be a strong, fit, functional, in our case, over 50-year-old, right? We're Walking's not going to do that. Walking's wonderful. If you've listened to this podcast, we think that everybody should walk. You should walk daily. Everybody should. I think Dr. Gabriel Lyon, I don't want to put words in her mouth, but I'm pretty sure she would agree with that fact. I'm pretty sure Jordan knows she would agree with that fact. And when she's saying, well, the conversation that some exercise is better than none, and we're holding ourselves to too low of a standard, she's probably right. When you look at most people being under muscled, in fact, Dr. Gabriel Lyon is very famous for saying that as Americans, our problem is less that we are over fat and more that we are under muscled. So that's where she's coming from. She is very much a muscle centric medicine type doctor. She feels very strongly when she's talking about muscle, she's not talking about slow twitch type 1 muscle, which we would, in fact, maintain by something like walking, a very healthy activity that everybody should do. But she's a specialist in a very certain, she's an advocate for strength training and for being strong, for building metabolically expensive muscle. And I can't for a second believe that Jordan Syatt wouldn't know that and wouldn't have listened to that full conversation and just clipped those two little sound bites out and then just gone full asshole on her. Because I mean, I don't really see another way of, because he's like, this is so dangerous. This could kill people if they thought that they shouldn't. Imagine somebody listening to this doctor and thinking they shouldn't walk and that some exercise is useless unless they can do this. And I'm like, dude, that's not what she's saying. That's not at all what she's saying. So now you know how I feel about it. I do follow Jordan. I like most of his content. He can be very, I mean, he's a young dude. He's kind of a hothead. And that's kind of his shtick, right? Be
Yeah.
a little bit prickly and asshole-ish, if that's a word. But I thought this one was completely over the top, and not for the least of which, because obviously Dr. Gabriel Lyon feel very, very strongly about the very important work she's doing out here. And I felt like he was just kind of fishing for the clicks or the trying to rev up the algorithm on Instagram by sparking this big debate. What do you think, Russell? You watched it now.
I think because I did see that clip before he mentioned it. I believe it was on TikTok, they're short little videos.
Right.
I don't know if that's where he got it from, and maybe he didn't listen to the whole part, the whole conversation. I don't know.
Oh, maybe
I
he
don't
may have just
know.
seen the
But
clip
I mean, I think
pieces,
that's
yeah.
kind of reckless of you to do also, without knowing the whole context of what's going on. I don't really like these guys who bash other people online because you don't
Yeah.
know what they're doing. You ever seen like the workout video? People that like go to a gym and they're like, what is he doing? And it's some
Yeah.
unique exercise. And then you figure out, oh, that's actually, there's a purpose to that. Not
Right.
all of it, but I just don't, I just don't like that. I just don't think that's an appropriate way of going at some without knowing the full context of what's going on. So
Yeah. I don't for a minute believe that he does not know her position on strength and
yeah,
muscle-centric medicine.
yeah, because
It's
she's
just it's
pretty
a po I mean,
popular.
she's at this point, yeah, she's a New York Times bestselling author with, the Forever Strong, and her message has been, she's out there quite a bit herself now. But I'm with you. I'm not a big fan of this because it does seem to be a thing, right? To tear other people down to whether it's watching somebody else do an exercise or people the way they eat and then just kind of rip into them. Who's big, strong dude. He does it all the time. And I follow him as well. Oh, God, why am I drawing a blank? I can't remember that dude's name. Oh, Lane Norton, Dr. Lane Norton.
Oh, okay.
Do you follow him on Instagram at all?
A little bit. I
A
don't
little bit, yeah.
yeah,
So he's also big on the just kind of tearing into people. And look, he's the Paul Saladinos and the Gary Breckers of the world that in some cases you could say they have it coming because some of them do say some outrageous things sometimes, and it seems like maybe they're just making things up or but
yeah.
he's all about, "Look, if there's not a randomized human control study trial to back up what you're saying, watch out because 'cause I'm coming at you and I'm coming at you hard." But he's another one of those ones that very much comes off hardcore, in your face, kind of a little bit assholey, but with a touch of humor as well. But at any rate, yeah, that does seem to be a thing, going after folks. But yeah, I wasn't a fan of that post. And well, Jordan puts out a lot of really good information. He makes great points about walking being critical. And yes, if you could only work out for 30 minutes twice a week, that's better than not working out at all.
Yeah.
I don't think that Gabriel Lyon would argue with that one little bit, but that's not the context that she was responding to, right? That's not the question. The question wasn't whether, hey, do you think that people should walk every day? And she said, no, that's ridiculous. They should never do that. That's not at all what happened, right? So anyway,
You
taking things out of context, not cool. Not
you
cool at all.
you know what I think too? I think, anything we say, somebody could pick apart and, like,
Oh, yeah, no,
you know how people
100%.
just wanna hear what
I'm
they wanna
sure
hear?
that
So
yes.
they're like, "Oh, she
Yeah,
said I gotta go hardcore on everything," so now that's their excuse to go over exercise, or
right.
not begin, start where you need to start and build off of that. So I think, I think somebody can pick apart what we say all the time too, even though we have the best
100%.
intentions or, or maybe they just hear what they want to hear and leave out the other part they didn't want to hear.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, we're I don't know, what are we, 280 something episodes in? I am quite sure that if
Cool.
somebody
Yeah.
really wanted to, they could go back and sound clip a whole bunch of us and make us look like complete and total idiots. Say,
Yeah.
"These guys are idiots, never listen to the Silver Edge." Yeah, at any rate, big fan, and you know what, though? That's really why I started a podcast. I wanted to have nuanced, long-form conversations about things that don't fit into sound bites. They don't fit into
Yeah.
Instagram 30-second reels. They're not TikTok. You just can't convey
Yeah.
some of these complex, nuanced subjects like nutrition and human biology and metabolism and strength training program
You,
really well in just a minute format, can you?
like this goes back to our big, big rock, little pebble, right? So,
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
mean, you could say walking is not all you need, but it might be somebody's big rock right now. Like they might be like,
Could be.
all right, I
Yes.
haven't moved, I don't move, I eat like crap, I don't
Yep.
exercise at all. So maybe a 10-minute walk would be an improvement for me. And that's their big rock right now. And they go on to that. So yeah, bring it back to our earlier podcast, just the big rock, little rock. It's
Yeah.
you know,
That's a very good point. Yeah.
yeah,
For somebody, a 10-minute walk could be life-saving, could be life-changing,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
Yeah.
100%. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Alrighty, man. Well, hey, I wanted to talk to you. I had a client ask me about the difference between free weights and machines. So this is a client that's currently working out at home and was going to a YMCA. Notice there's a whole bunch of machines and then a free weight area. He was kind of asking me why would one do one? And he said, the machines seem kind of overwhelming. And I've heard other similar questions about that. So I thought we might spend the rest of our time here just chit chatting a little bit about free weights and machines. So let's start out here. When you started your journey, strength training journey, did you start with free weights? You start with machines? You start somewhere else? Where did you
No,
start?
well, the gym part of it, I did a lot of calisthenics and whatnot with the sports.
Is that right?
We didn't do a lot of gym stuff. I was in basketball and soccer, and baseball, so it wasn't really weight focused back then. When I first got into the gym, it was machines because it was the least intimidating. Like
Yeah.
not everyone knew what weight you put up, and you didn't drop things or things like that. So that was my first first time in the gym, doing that. And now I don't touch any machines. And it's not because I don't think they're useful. I think they're useful, but I think they're useful a little more useful maybe in the beginner stage or even on an injury stage where you have a little more support. It's not all over the place. I remember when I was rehabbing my shoulder back, I would use mostly machines just because
Hmm.
it would help me out better. And then I got off of it. But for me, I'm not a huge fan of machines. A lot of them I think can be restricting depending on which ones you use, and a lot of it you can use as a crutch too. So you're
Yeah. Yep.
you hide some weaknesses, which you
Yeah.
can't hide with dumbbells or free weights. So I do like that aspect of it. But yeah, no, I don't think I use any machines. The only thing I might use is a leg press, but that's about it.
Leg press. Yeah.
Yeah, leg press
Okay.
or calf machine. I take that back.
Calf machine's a
Yeah,
good
those are
one.
probably the
Yeah.
two I use. And then other than that, they can get rid of the machines at the gym. I wouldn't even notice, other than
Mm.
the
All right.
extra space. But
Yeah.
that's just
Yeah.
me. If I have a client who's more comfortable, we can go the machine route. But I would eventually like to get them over to free weights. That's the main goal. I I
Yeah. No,
I think they're far superior to anything. But again,
same.
right. That's big rock, little rock, right?
Sure. Yep. Yeah. No, that's okay. So I had a similar introduction to you, I guess. My first time walking into a Globo gym, I was probably late 40s by this time. So I'd never been in a gym. And it was very, very intimidating to me. I was very, very weak at that point. I was still very much a skinny, fat kind of a guy, and just again, very, very weak from having not done any strength training really, and actually not coming off a period of being sedentary and very inactive. And like you, I walked in, it just seemed very, very overwhelming. I was intimidated. I was a little bit embarrassed to be there. And I would just watch people use the machines and then I would go behind them and try and copy what I saw. And so I I don't know how long I did that. I didn't have any kind of program. I just went from one
Yeah,
thing to another without any idea what I was doing. And then as I got a little bit more proficient in the machines, this was my first coaching experience ever. I One of the big meatheads in the gym who was, I guess, probably the sales manager or something, got a hold of me one day, probably walked up on the floor and said, "Hey, can I show you a thing or two?" And I was like, still very insecure. Here's a big muscly dude. I'm this little grimy guy just trying to figure things out. And I said, sure. And he just, he took me through a couple of things and wore me out. And then he took me back into a back room, hard sold me as a sales guy. I'm looking back and I was like, man, that dude he brought game. He brought sales game that day. So I signed a contract. I was like, yeah, I'm all in. And of course, he wasn't my trainer. He signed me to a trainer. And it was the funniest thing because I was going just from machine to machine to machine. I did something different every time
yeah.
I came in. And when I got my first trainer, nothing changed. That's exactly what I did. Went from machine to machine to machine. The only thing
Oh,
that
really?
happened is I had a guy now with a clipboard who said, okay, how many reps? And looked like he was writing it down. But then the next time I came in, I did something completely different. And the next time I came in, I did something completely different. Then that dude got fired. And I got another guy who did the exact same thing.
Mm,
It was really weird. I don't know if that's how they trained these guys, but it wasn't until maybe my third coach, in that one contract, 'cause there's kinda high turnover in some of these Globo gyms type environments, that I actually got a guy who was like, asked me, "Hey, what do you want?" And I was too embarrassed to say I wanna be big and buff.
yeah.
So I was like, I wanna be healthy and just, whatever, some geek bullshit kinda thing." And so he was kinda trying to he's doing his best to pull it out of me, "What are your goals?" sort of thing. And he wrote me a program. He said, "Okay, we're gonna do these things on this day and these things on this day." So that was my first introduction. I was still mostly machines, but for me, the big breakthrough came, I mean, I've told this at least part of the story in this podcast before. One, I was still primarily, I was doing some dumbbell the guy had me doing some dumbbell stuff, but I was mostly doing machines because that's where I was comfortable. But I would watch the big guys and big girls over there on the squat rack. And I remember seeing somebody squat full ass to grass, like just do a proper full range of motion squat. And I was thinking to myself, man, that guy's gonna get hurt. That's not the because I hadn't seen anybody else squat like that. Everybody was half repping in my gym. And I remember seeing that, and I can't remember if I asked the guy. I think I went home and Googled, and it was squat, deep, injury, something like that. At a somewhere along that time, I found the book by The Barbell Prescription by Dr. Jonathan Sullivan.
Mhm.
And if you guys don't know, he actually Sully's been on the show before, the author of that book. And he comes out of the Mark Ripito school, so the starting strength school. So very much barbell focus. So I went from this primarily machine routine to all barbell. I went to just basically squat, deadlift, bench, and some overhead press because that's what was in the barbell prescription. And it talks about doing those lifts. So I did those for the longest time. And as I got stronger and stronger, more confident in those lifts, because Russell, you probably know the first time you touched a barbell, it was probably awkward and you were weak,
Yeah.
but you progress pretty quickly,
Yeah.
especially if you don't, I was coming from nowhere, so I had nowhere. I was coming from the bottom. I had nowhere to go but up. I got stronger and stronger and stronger, and it was a lot of fun. Every week I was putting 10 pound, another 10 pounds on my deadlift and my squat, and I was adding another 5 pounds to my bench, and every other week I was adding another 10 pounds to my overhead press, and I was digging that. And I went from being, a fan of without really knowing why, I was just a fan of all machines to kind of turning my nose down at, looking down my nose at the machines. I was getting a little snobby, in other words. I was like, barbells are the way to go. And that was kind of that whole Ripito school of thought where, oh, you don't need what are you, a wuss? You don't need those machines. They're not
Yeah.
good for anything. And so I kind of fell into that for a while. And like you, I've now come back to this more hybrid sort of an approach. I do like machines for a lot of things. Like you had mentioned, I love it for somebody who's just starting out and very deconditioned. So if I get that person, he or she, to join a gym, I think machines are a great way to start because the intimidation factor, for a few of the reasons that you have mentioned, is much, much lower. The injury risk, because unfortunately we're online trainers, right? We're not in the room. And while we encourage our clients to video themselves, send us a video for form check and review, and some are great at that, some not so much, it's not the same as having somebody in real time check your form. So uh, I do like to use that for somebody who's just starting out, doesn't have any real experience lifting weights, and is very deconditioned, weak, basically, because it's a way for us to start building muscle in a very relatively safe environment. So, but like you, the goal is to when can we transition over to free weights, right?
Mhm.
Because when you're in a machine, you're sitting down or laying down, and there's a prescribed plane of movement for whatever lever you're pushing, whether that's with your legs or your arms or pulling, right? But when you're using free weights, you're using your full body to prescribe that range of motion. All your stabilizer muscles are now are firing up, and so I think that that's one of the reasons why when we say a trainer might say free weights are definitely superior to machines, I think what we're saying is they're more efficient tools when it comes to building muscle. Is that fair, do you think?
Yeah. 100%. I think it's fair. Uh, An important thing you said that I started out doing too is when I went from machine to machine. There was no rhyme or reason. There was no,
Right.
I didn't
Yeah. Not
docu
an actual
yeah, I
program.
didn't
Yeah.
document anything. I didn't know.
Yep.
I just went to the machine. Oh, I did 30 last time. I'll do 30 this time, or whatever the case. And it wasn't until, like you said, you started documenting I used to write it on a notepad, bench press,
Right.
245s, and then I would add weight to it. That's when I really saw some great significant gains. I don't think I did that with the machines though. Machines, for some reason, I always thought whatever was free, I'll just go to. So if I'm
Yeah.
doing something, all right, then that one's free. Let me go to that one. That's how I
Yeah.
just figured it out. But yeah, I do agree there's a reason for them to be there. And again, we could turn our nose up to any kind of exercise, but exercise is just,
Sure.
there's really no bad exercise. It's just what we're trying to accomplish that might be the, it's,
Yeah, no, that's well said. Absolutely. There I mean, any exercise done correctly can be a good exercise, right? And it's in the context of your goals, whether it's an optimal exercise or not. And look, you and I, when we were just starting out, or anybody for that matter, who's going to the gym and is just going from machine to machine to machine willy nilly without recording, without a plan, is light years ahead of that version of themselves that was doing nothing. Kind of going back
100%.
to Jordan picking on on Dr. Gabriel Lyon for her saying, "Hey, sometimes we're setting the bar too low." Right. When the goal is building significant amounts of muscle, then yeah, then that's still back in the beginner's phase. But yeah, you're light years ahead of the person that's sedentary on the couch if you're getting in there and getting familiar and just moving from machine to machine. But the natural progression then would be, Russell, you said it perfectly. I got a little notebook and started writing things
Yeah.
down because now what we're doing is we're starting this concept of progressive overload. Okay, I
Yeah.
did that at 135 pounds last week. I did it for 10 times and I did it 3 sets. So I did 10, 10, and 10. Next time I go in the gym, I'm looking back, because I too started with the old notebook. In fact, it wasn't until I started this business, and of course now we have apps and everything, that I finally switched over from my notebooks and started recording everything in our apps. But I had so I'd flip back through my notebook and say,
Yeah.
okay, last week, what did I do? Okay, I did 3 sets of 10 and 135 pounds. Let me see if I can do 3 sets of 10 and 145 pounds this week. So I'd grab a couple 5 pound plates and put them on each end, and boom, there you go. So once you start recording things, now we're starting this record, right? This history. We can always look back and we can track our progress. But I think just as importantly as tracking our progress, we can now make plans to, for that progressive overload. So can I do an extra rep? Can I add
Hmm.
an extra pound? And can I increase this resistance a little bit in order to get that muscular adaptation that we're chasing? And you mentioned a couple things, and I think you said another place you like to use machines, and this is one of my favorites, is people with tweaks or injuries. Now, look, let me back up. I'm gonna amend that. 'Cause I don't wanna say injuries. If you're injured, you need to go see a doctor and take their advice on what to do. If you're tweaked, and let's just use a back tweak because that's a really common one. So you just got this nagging
Yeah.
back pain or it's a little tweaky, not injured, that's different. This is not advice for what to do if your back is injured. But I love, because for me personally, I had and it was kinda weird. I had, for the first time ever, sort of a mid back tweak about a month ago. I'm guessing that's deferred pain, maybe from low back, hips, something. It's kind of in the mid lat insertion. I'm just getting these little spasmy tweaks, and it just didn't feel good squatting and deadlifting. So you know what I did? Went over to the leg press, loaded that sucker up. I haven't been on a leg press in forever, and it's
Yeah.
fun to do a leg press because you get to stack all those plates on there, right?
Yeah. There's a lot
And
you can
I
stack on.
look, a lot of the guys like that machine because you just keep
It's
on stacking 45s for
into
days,
ego.
right? Because you can lift a lot of it. And then you see them get in there and the range of motion is 6 inches, which is a little ridiculous. So look, your knees need to come all the way back, people. But at any rate, yeah, so I switched to doing a lot of the machines. And I think that, so somebody with maybe, again, not injuries, but just a little bit of tweak, not quite feeling it, I think a machine is a great way to do it because look, if my back's a little bit tweaked and I'm in, so a leg press, if you're not familiar, actually at an angle and you're laying back, my entire back from my tailbone to my head is supported. So I'm transferring, I'm still getting significant amounts of weight into the glutes, the hamstrings, and the quads. So I'm still loading those up and moving significant weight, but with less risk to, say, a tweaky back. So another place I really love doing machines is somebody's just maybe not feeling it. I think that's really good. I think the other place that machines, and certainly and I go to a Globo gym that's got a ton of like legit bodybuilder community. There are some
Mm.
big buff dudes and dudettes in there. Like lots of them, and some young ones. Well, most of them are young, but a few old ones as well. But you see those guys and gals, they use everything. So they're all over the place. So they're using machines and they're using them in unique ways often. They're using machines that aren't meant to be used in this way, the cable machines and all this, but they have very advanced aesthetic goals, right? I think,
Yeah.
the rear delt is lagging a little bit. I need to
Yeah.
bring that up. Well, that person's probably over there on that maybe a cable machine or on the reverse fly machine pounding them out. So and then the other thing I think about machines that I like about machines, and I've just because I told you I had that kind of tweaky back and I was doing more, hack squats and leg presses, things I haven't done in forever. I really enjoyed it. I like the variety. So in my gym, when I first joined this big gym, they have some machines I've never seen. They have what's called a pendulum squat, which is
Mhm.
kind of crazy. They have that belted squat. And
Yeah.
that I'm thinking of two different machines, but I'm may have miscalled that first one, whatever it is. But they have these fun machines, right? And there's nothing wrong with that, right? For
No.
do a program block where, hey, you know what? I'm gonna get strong in these belt squats because it's just fun and unique. But at any rate, there you go. I am a big fan still, and I think across the board for all of us here at the Silver Edge, when we program for our clients, regardless of whether they're beginners, intermediate, we have a few that I would call advanced, but most of our folks are beginner, intermediate folks. It's predominantly free weights. And I get that question sometimes. Somebody's going to the gym and they're like, hey man, you got me doing all these boring barbell and dumbbell things. How come I can't do any of those cool machines over there, right? You ever get that from clients? They ever
Yeah,
got a question?
and it's hard too because we don't know what machines are there because we're not
Yeah,
there. So if
right,
I say go do something that I know my gym has, your gym might not have
right.
it. Or, funny one that I always get is if I program a leg curl, there's the seated one
Yeah,
and then there's the
yep,
laying down one. And they're like, well, can I
right,
just use the laying down one? I'm like, well, yeah, it's the same move. It's just you're laying
yep.
down. Yeah. So that's the hard thing. Like, those machines you
What
just
machines I have.
explained, I don't have them at my gym, so it's a hard thing to program, especially if you don't have it. So I usually have them either take a photo of it so I know what they're talking about and I can
Yep,
tell them where to program it. But yeah, I
yep,
don't mind machines, like I said, but I think, you know, more bang for your buck is going to be the barbell and dumbbell. And
yep.
even just putting the little 5-pound weight on there, that's something, for us guys, it's ego mostly. And once you once you get past that and you're like, okay, no one's looking at me anyway. So
Yeah, right.
no one's they're
Exactly.
only looking at
Yeah.
the monsters that are putting on the monster
A big weight.
plates.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And look, that's what I do in my gym. I'll see somebody loading up 5, 6 plates, and I'm like, "Ooh, okay, let's see what's getting ready to happen over here."
Yeah.
But for the rest of the time, I'm kind of, yeah, doing my own thing.
Yeah, I wouldn't notice. I just notice things as a trainer. That's all I notice,
Yes.
like
Yeah.
bad form or something like that.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, let me ask you this. As a trainer, when you're working out and you see somebody just butchering a movement, do you ever say anything? Do you ever go up to somebody and say, "Hey, man,"
Um,
or "Hey, ma'am"?
no, I don't. Because I don't
I
I
don't
don't
either.
work
I
at that.
never have.
Yeah, I don't work at the
Yeah.
gym. So if I worked there, it'd be different. There was one person I was going to say something to, and I'm so happy I didn't because he's a little off. And more and more I
Right.
go to the gym, I noticed too, you know what I mean? And I was gonna say something. I'm like, oh God, I'm so glad I didn't. If somebody asked me though, I'm more than happy to. And which is funny,
Yes.
funny you bring that
Yeah,
up.
same.
Everyone is so intimidated by gyms. Gyms can be the most friendliest places ever. Even your gym, Kevin, with all those monsters in there.
Yep.
Like,
100%.
right? You ask them one
Yeah.
time, hey, how do I get a better pump on my bicep? They'll give you 47
You
different
got a
ways of doing
friend
it.
for
Yeah.
life. Yeah,
Yeah.
you do.
And which is really important with the machines too, because those machines can be like sometimes you almost need an engineering degree to figure out what you're supposed to
Right?
do it, especially if that little diagrams worn on it, it gives you the
Yeah,
example of what to do. So ask somebody. I've never
definitely.
had a bad time where I had to ask somebody, something, or if I could use a particular thing that they're near or whatever. Everyone's so nice, no matter what gym I've ever been in. So don't ever be intimidated.
100%.
Yeah.
Yeah, so and we've talked about this a little bit before. I know in the past, I think we've done whole episodes dedicated to gym intimidation, and one of my pieces of advice is, here's how to get over it. If you're female, go find the buffest, baddest babe in the gym
Yeah.
and ask her for help for a spot. Ask her a question. Guaranteed she's a friend for life. She's gonna take you under her
Mhm.
wing. If you're a dude, and I know this is maybe it's easier for girls. It's hard to say, but for me, this was really, really this is a tough one to learn, but go find the biggest, baddest, buffest dude and same. Just be vulnerable, ask
Yeah.
for help, ask for a spot, ask how to do something. I promise these because what happens is, look, you don't get to be the biggest, baddest, buffest babe or the biggest, baddest, buffest dude in the gym casually. You're passionate.
Yeah.
You put a lot of
Oh yeah.
hard
No, yeah.
work into this.
That's not an
So
overnight thing.
it's not an overnight thing,
Yeah.
right? So now you're asking somebody who's clearly very passionate about something for help. And I guarantee you're going to find that even these big, scary faced dudes and dudettes are some of the friendliest, nicest people when you
Well,
get them talking about something that they love, right?
it's like asking your mechanic friend for car advice, right? They love giving
Yeah.
it out. You know what I
They
mean?
love talking about cars.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
it's the same
Yeah.
situation. It's, you ask somebody for some help on something. Like me, I'm starting to take up.
Right
So
on, man. Baking?
I love cooking,
Yeah.
but I've never done baking too. I think probably because it's very technical. You have to have very
Mhm.
precise measurements.
Gotta
So
be like a chemist.
I have
Yeah.
a friend that I haven't talked to in many, many years. Old neighbor, and she used to bake all the time. So I sparked up conversation with her. It's funny. She just loves it. Like she throws out all these little tips and tricks and hints and yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, never be afraid to ask the gym people for help or guidance on it. It's definitely one thing I wish I would have done when I first started.
Same,
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah.
Wish I'd have done that. I mean, I was so wrapped up in my insecurities for
Yeah.
so long, and I'll tell you, it's not even that long ago. So for a while, after I was already, I mean, for my size, I was fairly strong, right? And because I'm out here in the boonies, one of the gyms closest to me is still a little ways off, but it was just a hole in the wall powerlifting gym. Now, if you know
Mhm.
powerlifting gym, so talk about machines. There were a couple of machines in here, but basically, this is where very, very, very strong and frankly very large men and women go and move ridiculous amounts of weight. They're primarily doing benches, squats, deadlifts, maybe some overhead presses, maybe some weighted dips, and then a few other accessory things. But really, they're doing those big compound lifts, and they're doing them for anywhere from one to maybe maxing out a set of five. So really low rep, lots of grunting, screaming, and then dropping barbells, things like that, right? So in that kind of environment, and look, I'd say I'm a fairly fit dude, right? I was a little scrawny dude in that gym, and it it's kind of funny. I got in there and I'm working my barbell bench press, and you know my 1 rep max is literally most of these guys for the guys that are in this gym. Most of them are warming up
Oh
with
yeah.
my 1 rep max,
100%.
maybe even more than my 1 rep max.
Yeah.
But you know what's really awesome? And again, I'm a little further on in my career in my journey, I will say, and I'm still intimidated in that environment. Not I knew what I was doing and I could kind of hold my own, but I wasn't anywhere near as strong as these guys in this gym. Man, did they take me under their wing. Those guys would spend just like 30 minutes saying, all right, you're just you need to work on a little bit more mobility because you need to get that arch in your back up a little bit more. You need to really work on your leg drive, right? Let me just take your hands and let's just take them out 1 inch more. All right, now when you come down, I want you to think about just all these tips,
Yeah.
and I mean, they just poured into me, man. And look, as a result, in my 50s, late 50s, I'm PRing for the first time ever. Bench press 1 rep maxes because these guys are giving me all this technical advice. So
Yeah.
yeah, I'm with you on the gym intimidation. If you can find it, if you can find the courage, just go find a big, tatted up, crazy looking dude or a big buff woman and ask her for some advice. Yeah, you'll make a friend for life. Because
Yep.
now, when I go into in these days, I'm wearing my headphones and it's that kind of a gym environment. But the big badass dudes in there, when I walk by, we're fist pumping or
Mhm.
giving the bro nod. Hey,
Yeah.
what's up? What's up? We're we're buds, and it's kind of funny because if I could squeeze into the conversation somewhere in there, I'll say, "Yeah, well, now I'm turning 60. I'm trying to, what? You're 60?"
Yeah.
Because most of these, they're kids, right? They're in their
Yeah.
20s. Most of these guys in the gym, so loving it.
No, that's awesome. That is awesome. Yeah.
Yeah,
I
man.
was working out a lot from home and now I'm like, all right, I'm at least going to the commercial gym at least once or twice a week. Just because I do miss that social
What's your
aspect.
preference? Are you a home workout guy, or are you if you could only do one, which would
So
it be? Would it be a
before 2020, I had a home gym. I never used it, like maybe once in a blue
yeah.
moon. And then 2020 came around, and God, that thing became heaven to me. And I set it all up nice because I just threw it all in some. And then I started buying, little pieces that I really wanted and
Mhm.
needed. And then from 2020 on, up until this past year, I had a gym membership I wasn't going to. I just loved my home gym. I just absolutely loved it. I love the solitude. I love because my kids were still young too. So nice being around and when they're home. And then, yeah, and then this year I was like, man, I'm really missing the gym atmosphere. Which is funny too, because sometimes you go there and you're like, oh my God, I forgot about that exercise. So, like you see something
Yeah,
that you used to do and you're like,
yeah.
oh my God, I totally spaced on that one. I want to add that into my next routine. Yeah. So I make a point to at least go once or twice to the commercial gym. So, but
Right on.
if I had to make a choice, it'd be home gym all the way. I love it.
Home gym? Huh.
Yeah, I think just for
Yeah,
being a busy parent and whatnot.
yeah.
If I was younger, it'd be the gym, the actual gym.
Because there's that whole social
Yeah,
scene too with the gym. Yeah,
yeah.
my daughter's 21 and she's a gym rat, and she's got her whole pack of, she's got her whole social
Bang.
circle that
Oh
revolves
yeah,
around the
yeah,
gym there. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of funny. At one point, I had an awesome home gym. I decked it out with all Rogue equipment. I had bumper plates. I had the full four-post rack. Had a decent number of dumbbells, a few kettlebells. I had a landmine attachment. I had the dip station, of course, pull-up bar with the rack. And now I don't have any of that. I had to get rid of all of it when we moved to the beach. One of the moves to the beach. I've moved back and forth, but as you know, I've moved quite a bit in my adult life, and now I don't have a home gym. And at one point, I probably would have said my preference. I definitely would have said my preference was a home gym. But I've come so full circle now, having worked in little studio or having worked and worked out in little studio gyms, CrossFit gyms, Globo gyms. I think of today, if I had to choose, I'd be in a Globo gym all the way,
Yeah.
which is not what I would have said at any point up until now. But I really like that atmosphere. The one I go to is it's fairly new, it's clean, it's well lit, it's giant. There's a ton of all kinds of people, right? So it's not just bodybuilders. There are normal people, there's overweight people, there's deconditioned people, there's old people, there's young people. There is a hardcore group of really dedicated men and women in there and getting it on. And that lights me up. I like to see that. I love my older folks that I see in there. Just like to see them getting in that environment, getting after it. And look, there's some jacked older guys and ladies that go to my gym, and that kind of fires me up. So I'd probably have to say more that big commercial gym is my jam right now.
Mm. Yeah. It might be from my previous life that keeps me a little bit unsocial. Being a cop for so many years, just the solitude
Yeah.
has actually been very nice these
Yeah.
past couple.
Gotcha. Well, I come from more criminal background, so I've got more of that side of it. That's probably why we get along, right? Opposites attract. Yeah, man. All right, well, Russell, let's kind of wrap this up and bring it home. And as we're wrapping up here, Russell, let's ask people if they want to continue this conversation to head over to the Over 50 Lean Body Blueprint. That's our private Facebook page. Me and Russell are hanging out in there. Love to continue the conversation, answer any questions, hear your feedback. Do you love free weights, hate free weights, love machines, hate machines? Wondering how come we didn't talk about other things that are in gyms like classes. Let's continue the conversation over there. Of course, we have our Coach Monica, Coach Jess are also in there. So love to continue the conversation. Head over there and we can chat some more there. But till next time, Russell, thanks so much for coming on the show and sharing your thoughts and knowledge with us. Okay, that's our show for today, folks. If you've enjoyed this podcast, I want to let you know that we have other free resources over at silveredgefree.com. There you'll find our free guides with our top tips on nutrition, exercise, and healthy lifestyle to assist you in your weight loss and fitness journey. So feel free to head over there and download anything that looks useful to you. I'll put links to everything we talked about in the show notes. You folks can find those over at silveredgefitness.com/281. As we wrap up our time together today, you can show your support for this show in two important ways. The first is to tell a friend about this podcast and encourage them to give it a listen. The second is for you YouTube folks to please click the like and subscribe buttons, and for you podcast folks to please give this podcast a 5-star review on whatever platform you listen to podcasts on, and be sure to subscribe and follow so you don't miss future episodes. I really appreciate you spending your time with me today, and until next time, stay strong.